Welcome back. You're still watching The Agenda. So Minister in the Presidency Khumbudzo Ntshavheni has briefed the media on the outcomes of the cabinet meeting held last week. To get some highlights of really what we've heard from the minister, we are now joined by our reporter Samkele Maseko. Samkele, good morning to you. I think no surprises that a big talking point there in that briefing from the minister was obviously the steps taken by the South African government and other countries as well just last week in referring the matter in Gaza to the International Criminal Court.
Indeed, Naledi, one of the key points is that Cabinet has taken that particular decision and President Ramaphosa to write that referral to the International Criminal Court on the crimes against humanity and the atrocities that are being perpetuated by the government of Israel against the people of Palestine in Gaza. You heard there the Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, saying that those letters of arrest must be issued out, particularly against the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, on the crimes against humanity that are being committed, on the atrocities against the people of Palestine by Israel. But I'm going to bring in the minister to further clarify this particular point. Minister, are you as a South African government essentially saying that the International Criminal Court, just like the issue of warrant of arrest against President Vladimir Putin, the same must be done to Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel?
That's exactly what we're saying. If you listen to us in the statement, we've indicated there have been more children killed in Gaza in the last month than children killed the whole of last year in all combined conflicts. So what President Putin is accused of by the ICC and the warrant of arrest issued for, it's picnic compared to what has happened to children and women in the Gaza Strip, and therefore President Benjamin Netanyahu must be held to account for that, and the global community must take action, and the ICC must lead in that front.
Are you confident that the ICC and particularly The Hague will respond positively to South Africa's referral amongst many other countries who've also done the same?
If they do not respond, it shows that they are not an objective body. It means then they can no longer hold anyone accountable. There cannot be a system of international justice and protection that works for a set of leaders and set of countries and not work for another set of countries. We formulated and their forebearers formulated the United Nations and its institutions to make sure that we protect all and sundry, with no fear, with no favor, equally. And if the ICC fails in that jurisdiction, we need as a global community find another alternative, or we need as the developing South to find a system that will protect us and disengage with the ICC.
When you look at South Africa currently in the global outlook, it has been raised particularly over the past 2 years by President Ramaphosa's forceful role in international politics. But you look at the research being done by Harvard University that says cadre deployment is what is making South Africa to crumble, lack of service delivery, amongst other issues, saying that you are deploying the wrong people in these government institutions.
As I've clarified during the press briefing, there's nothing wrong with cadre deployment. You have to deploy the people who understand your policies, who will defend and agree with you in terms of mandate. But the challenge that you have is whether you are deploying the right fit, and the ANC will address that. But I want to clarify another point, which I didn't do. Majority of public servants, whether in national government or in provincial government or municipalities, they're not ANC members. They may vote ANC, but they're not members of the ANC. They've not been deployed by the ANC. They work there. So to then blame cadre deployment in a cohort of just 10% of what is deemed the leadership, because that's what the ANC deems. They deploy politicians as councillors. They may deploy at a management level, but majority of staff who have technical people who must execute are not members of the ANC. They've not been deployed by a deployment committee of the ANC. So they're hiding behind a cadre deployment to deal with the incompetencies or lack of ability to deliver by civil servants or public servants. It's a bit cheap, because they have a test and expect them to should have analyzed what is the percentage membership. I remember when I was in the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, I asked in the management team, how many of you are ANC members? There was only 2 hands that were raised out of a collective team of 10. And I said, but therefore, why do we blame the ANC for failure to conclude digital migration, to conclude SA Connect? Because it's not the ANC, it's the management team of that entity. And we said, what has to be done? And we worked together to gain the progress that we attained. It was not ANC deployed cadres that were executing. We could go in any entity. You can go to Transnet, you can go to ESCOM. The people working there are not ANC. There are employees who were hired through a competitive process of identifying. There was no deployment committee that says, Minister Khumbudzo go and, or Minister Godan go and employ X person. So we must not hide behind cadre deployment for its cadres, because any party has to deploy accordingly. And if you recall, in the 2022 conference, the ANC reaffirmed in its resolution, and I don't speak for the ANC, they reaffirmed the need to have qualifications, including for councillors and all deployment cadres, so that you can have educated people leading. And that's an acceptance that there need to be an improvement in the cadre deployment. But to blame it for all and sundry of our problems is very unfair.
So you are saying that Harvard University in their research is thoroughly wrong on this particular perspective of cadre deployment?
I'm saying Harvard University in their research is very limited in the outcomes and the outputs that they found, and they know as researchers you can be limited. It can be what we call research limitation, so it's very limited. It is the limitation because they focus on the leadership and they do not check the impact of the majority and the bulk of those in the public service and public entities.
When you look at issues of rand manipulation, currency manipulation, Standard & Chartered has come out and said they participated in the manipulation of the South African rand. ABSA in the country, then led by Maria Ramos, admitted that they also manipulated the rand. But nothing has happened to those executives of ABSA. Nothing has happened to these financial institutions. McKinsey siphoned millions of rands out of the country to state capture, but nothing has happened to them as yet.
Thank you for that question. And the issue, and I've expressed on behalf of government the concerns on the manipulation, the impact it has done, and also that this is a demonstration that business has been active in wanting to destroy South Africa. Because when you manipulate the rand, you want the economy of the country to collapse, and that those businesses were not run by patriots. And it continues, and it's not unique to that period. There are things that business is doing now to undermine the economy and the standing of this country. And we're not saying there are no patriotic business people who are working with government to build and rebuild this country and the economy better. But what has been happening, specific to the rand manipulation, the Competition Commission has been engaging, because if you are following up, is it 28 banks and financial institutions that are at play, you need to have a solid case. So you need to then incentivize some to come and become state witnesses so that you can have evidence to prosecute the others. And the pace at which, if you recall, this was 2015. The time is taking, it shows the matter is complex. And they say they are confident now that they can take the matter to prosecution so that they can hold those who have not come forward to account and continue to deal with the penalties of the others. And it will also be determined, those who have come and done disclosures, whether their disclosures are sufficient, proportional to what the impact has been made. And you raise the issue of McKinsey and Bain and all that. And they've been trying to make mechanisms of saying, how do we compensate? And it's that proposal that we have to have as a nation a discussion to say those who have done this country wrong, how do we rebuild together? How do we, and it cannot be looking at, we prosecute some Kelo, but when it comes to Khumbudzo, we must negotiate a package for Khumbudzo to have it easy. If we want to be just and fair and rebuild and have an equal trust, because the black professionals, for instance, they complain that there's been a vilification and demonification of black professionals, whereas these white companies, whether it's KPMG, you recall the stories of KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers themselves, they were involved in shenanigans, and there were no, people have deemed it not to have a sufficient punishment or consequences for them. So it's a conversation that as leadership we must reflect back and say, how do we address that in a manner that is satisfactory, but how do we have recourse and make sure such does not happen again?
But is this not an indictment on the government for its failures to change the outlook of the financial sector? Because if you look at the financial sector in South Africa, it is largely white controlled.
We've been on the transformation path and we've been trying to get that changed. There have been a number of policies that we've put in place to do the transformation. And unfortunately, those of us, those amongst us, who were given an opportunity to run the African banks in particular, they have not really clothed us in glory. But they are shining example. The African bank is building back stronger. And we must also take a conscious decision as South Africans to say, where do you bank Samkel? Where do you bank Khumbudzo? Even if you maintain your bank account in ABSA that was involved in the manipulation, you must equally have a bank account in the African bank so that it can build back stronger and make sure that we can then have the transformation. But we also appreciate the participation or the entrance of Africans and black people in general in the financial sectors, whether it's in the reassurance industries and other industries where they are participating. The question is, do we give them the licenses on time to own these banks, and can a traditional bank work in this current condition? And if it can't, how do we support them to progress further? And that is the challenge you must throw at us. It cannot be an indictment, because the transformation journey has not ended, and we've indicated that 30 years will never be enough to reverse the 300 years of colonialization and exclusion and deliberate exclusion of the black child.
When you speak about transformation, VBS Bank was there. You are from that particular part of the country. Our gogos had to go by without getting their money. So the issue of transformation and also giving licenses to some who operate these banks, they end up looting them and drying them up. Case in point, VBS.
That's why I said those of us who were given the opportunity to run that, they didn't clothe us in glory. And VBS is not just me from being there. I'm directly affected on that. So it's a personal issue. I do not even want to go about that. That's why the recourse and restitution of the victims of VBS, we will not rest until everybody who lost their to the last cent is repatriated. Those who were contributing to the destruction of VBS, they must be held to account. If we have to take their assets so that their grandchildren and great-grandchildren must feel it, that has to be done. And if the government does not move, we'll move as private residences. The founding people, the largest depositors, founding people, are not people who do not know. They are our parents, they are our neighbors, they are people who died because they get ailments, because they could not take their children and grandchildren to varsity because their money was squandered in VBS. And it's for that reason we said we didn't clothe, those of us given the opportunity, we didn't clothe ourselves in glory. And the question is, how do we rebuild and say that which has happened with VBS will not happen again with another bank? And that how do we rebuild another VBS? Because VBS, before it collapsed, it survived from 1982 until 90. So VBS has been vibrant and a very good bank. Our houses were built by the money from VBS's when we were growing up. A whole lot of things that when you see me, part of that which contributed to me is the savings that were in VBS. So it has not been a bad bank. It's a bad bank. It's the people who took over VBS who collapsed it, and that's why I said they did not clothe us in glory, but there must be retribution for those who are victims.
Last question. Can you please whisper to me why you pushed out the DG of State Security?
Do you know how tall the DG is? Imagine me pushing her out. But just to clarify it, the Director General had resigned before I joined previously, and the President continued to decline. And when she insisted that she's resigning in April, I had just taken office in March. The President accented, and because there was no malice, it was said, let's agree on a period of your exit so that you don't cause instability by leaving abruptly, and therefore their exit date is the 30th of November, and we wish her well. I do not have the body size to can push the Director General out of the system, and I'm not a violent person, Samkel. I may just be bold when I speak, but violence, no.
So there was no breakdown in relations. Pella, you can be very forceful, we are told. Was there nothing?
Not on my part, because me and her, we share bottles of water, and you can go and check in my handbag. If I'm going to see the DJ, we're going to a long meeting, there will be chocolates in her bag, because she provides chocolates for me, because we need some energy at some point. And to keep me, I need energy, bubbly of energy, so she'll keep the chocolates going. I also do the same. We drink both sparkling water and we share bottles. If the water runs out, DJ, give me yours, let me drink from yours. When you're old, you have drank enough. So that's the nature of the relationship. She'll comment about me when I'm tired of high heels, and I'm saying, can I put high heels? Sometimes I'll actually put on high heels because I'm afraid that DJ will say, Minister, you're not representing me. So a person who you have that type of banter is not a person that you can fight with. And like any other person, where in the place of work, you'll differ in opinions on how things must be done this way and that way, but it doesn't account for a breakdown of relations. And yeah, I worked with her, and my weaknesses are mine, her strength are hers, and we continue to work together.
Be careful of taking water from people. You'll end up with poison, having to go to Russia for treatment. That is Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. They're giving feedback on the cabinet meeting and also South Africa's perspective when it comes to the Israeli-Palestine conflict and Hamas. South Africa writing that referral to the International Criminal Court, saying Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, must be issued with a warrant of arrest, like it was done to President of Russia, President Vladimir Putin.
Samkela Maseko bringing us that update there.